Partnered by Times Influence. The Aviation Insurance Symposium 2018, held in partnership with GIC Re and New India Assurance, presented by global insurance brokers, brought together all relevant stakeholders of the aviation insurance industry under one roof. This episode explores the leading trends and emerging threats in aviation safety.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Aviation Insurance Symposium 2018, brought to you in partnership with GIC Re and New India Assurance, and of course presented by Global Insurance Brokers Private Limited. Now, post 9/11, the aviation insurance industry has experienced a dramatic paradigm shift, a pivotal paradigm shift, which leads us to ask ourselves, how can players in this ecosystem, in this aviation sector, get better at qualifying, classifying, calculating, and ultimately anticipating risk? So to lead us through this conversation about how to better mitigate and manage risk, may I please invite on stage the Associate Director at KPMG, Captain Vinod Narasimhamurthy. And joining him are dignitaries who include the Inspector General of Police for the Airport Sector, Central Industrial Security Force, Rajiv Ranjan Sahib. Former Director General of Police, Maharashtra, and ex-Director Security Air India, Satish Mathur. Founding partner at Altitude Risk Partners, London, Richard Power. And partner and global head of aviation at Kennedy's, Singapore, Peng Lim. With that, Vinod, I give it over to you.
This is the doom and gloom session where most of us are going to highlight the risks. But in reality, the aviation industry is faced with considerable risk, security threats. Essentially, what I'd like to do from our panelists is to get their perspective on how what are the threats that they consider, what is the threat landscape, and are we geared up to meet those threats? Another significant aspect is, are insurers or is the insurance industry developing products and solutions to deal with these newer and emerging threats, as opposed to the traditional, the hull insurance, the hull war insurance, and things like that. That is something that I'd like to start with. So if I can start with Mr. Sahai. We understand that the CISF was introduced in the early 2000s, and it replaced the state police forces in manning the Indian airports. But with UDAN and the regional connectivity scheme coming in, we will witness once again a disparate set of forces manning this national aviation security grid. How do you expect this to play out in terms of the security standards being maintained? And what are the mitigating factors in your?
Right now, we have got 100 operational airports in the country, of which 60 is manned by CISF. And we came at the airport post-Kandahar hijacking. And the idea was to have a specialized aviation security force, to bring about uniformity in terms of security architecture and functioning and protocols being followed at all the airports. So around 200 more airports are going to be added to our number of airports. Of these, in the first phase, we have already started for 45 new airports. Security is one issue which is being debated, that who should look after the security. Should CISF be providing security, or it should be provided by the state police? And I think various other factors are at play to decide who is going to decide about it. But Government of India under Ministry of Home Affairs, they are of the firm footing that for uniformity purpose, and also from the fact that from 2000 when we took over, till date, touch wood, there has not been any instance of any major security failures.
Most of us who've flown during the 90s, later part of the 90s, and subsequently 2000, we've seen what the change has been ever since CISF has been introduced. Richard, if I can get your perspective on the threat landscape itself. In terms of the global threat landscape,
sure,
we understand that we are in a complex geopolitical arena?
Very, very much so. I'd like to answer that question in two ways, really, looking at the global picture and then looking specifically at India. So from the global perspective, we still see the traditional political or religious terrorist events where they could assault an airport by traditional means using bombs or military weapons. And this we've seen across the globe, in Brussels airport, in Ataturk in Istanbul, and also we've seen two other recent developments where we've seen mental illness is also another factor we've had to take into consideration. So where crews have deliberately crashed, hijacked an aircraft and crashed it. We've seen that in Mozambique. We saw that very recently this year in Alaska. So it's kind of very much an evolving landscape in terms of threat.
So, Mr. Mathur, going from there, how does a country then, therefore, look at maintaining standards of security while dealing with this kind of growth and also catering for comfort of passengers?
Well, to put it in the correct perspective, as far as India is concerned, we have standards are laid down by the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, which is the overarching body and the regulator, as we call them. There is a good amount of standardization as far as domestic as well as international operations are concerned. There are variations in each country depending upon its culture. True. For instance, we noticed when we went to Japan that they would not ban lighters from being carried on the flight. But the other security systems in some of these countries are so fabulous that they take care of most of the concerns which, for instance, an operator from our side would have. And there is also a huge amount of sharing of information. Sure. Whenever there is an incident, within a few minutes, a message goes around to all the other air operators and to the ground handling staff, which is basically the airport operators and these, to kind of prevent or block that kind of an incident. So there is, as of now, I feel, a very robust mechanism. I've handled it from both sides, from the air side as well as from the aviation side. So we have changed our laws also in India, which relate to hijacking, etc. And we also changed our way of looking at it.
I'd just like to add one more point here that in terms of security oversight, there's uniformity when we talk about. So we are looking at 60 airports, and the regulators are Bureau of Civil Aviation, BCAS. But the BCAS had the limitation of less staff. They were only at 6 airports. They have gone to 20 airports. So from our side, we have submitted a SOP on unified security architecture, whereby we will be supplementing their efforts in terms of regulation, monitoring, audit, training everywhere. Even airports, we are not working. And this has gone to the ministry, and I think it's a matter of time that it will be accepted.
Moving from that, we were speaking about the aspects of air rage and others while we were having our discussion. India has also recently come out with a no-fly list which deals with unruly behavior on board and things like that. So, one, how is it if you've been able to examine something like that at various states, when I say states, various countries, do you see that being a tenable threat towards curbing this kind of behavior? What are your conclusions?
Well, for some reason, people's personalities seem to change when they get onto an aircraft. Civility goes out the window. And it's the irony of it all. I guess if you look at legal responses to air rage, there's been some developments, and particularly with the Tokyo Convention, and I guess the big issue has always been, what can the crew do to control an unruly passenger? Ultimate responsibility goes to the pilot in command. Will the pilot in command actually be involved in the restraint? Not usually. There were some revisions to the Tokyo Convention, I think it was last year, trying to address the chain of command in the decision-making process. And if you look at the fine detail, it's actually the threshold that a pilot in command has to reach in order to activate something is quite high. And there's been some jurisprudence in the US which is actually quite disappointing for the airline industry. Ultimately, you have legal responses to things, but there's many stakeholders involved. There's a responsibility for airlines and airports to work with each other. So there's a multiple stakeholder approach that has to be taken.
When you're in a business like aviation, which has inherent risks in it, you cannot hope to cover all of those exposures yourself. You have to rely on a pool of money being available to you to deal with those catastrophic events, such as a major accident. Now, happily, they're very rare, but when they do happen, you need that resource available to deal with the consequences in a manner which is acceptable to the travelling public and to the regulators.
The wonderful thing is that you have international people here too, so it's an opportunity to share and exchange knowledge. There are people who have come from international markets who are giving presentations alongside people from India who are giving presentations, and it's that sharing of knowledge and understanding which I think is so valuable.
On a worldwide basis, civil aviation continues to grow strongly. We see particularly strong growth here in India. I think that will continue as the middle class continues to blossom and continues to wish to travel and visit new places. So the future is bright for civil aviation.
Mr. Mathur, I also wanted to ask, when classifying and moving threats or addressing threats, there's also an issue of painting the entire canvas with a broad brush to say all threats are equal and I will deal with them in one manner. Also, there are programs like TSA Pre which push in the pre-screened passengers with application of lesser security controls. Is this a measure to deal with growth as we are looking at in the aviation industry? And does it help in passenger throughput, in ensuring convenience to people who are graded to be lesser threats?
I have a personal view on this, which is different from the industry view. My personal view is that if I am flying, I would like the passenger next to me having to undergone the same checks as me, because we are responsible. He's equally, he could be a potential threat as far as I am concerned. That's my personal view. It didn't meet very much the eye of the government when I expressed it when I was with the airline. Having said that, preferential treatment is very, very difficult to impart. The problem which is happening is that there are ways and ways of checking people at the passengers. And one is, I'll speak about it a little later, is the over-concern for the threat from the passenger. Now there are, as you said, many more threats from the external environment. Drones is one huge threat, which is nothing to do with the passenger at all. The growth in habitation around the airports is another huge threat to the aviation security and safety. So those two need to be also addressed from the environment point of view. Passenger threat can be met very easily, I feel, with just increasing the checkpoint. Instead of preferential, improve your systems is a much better way.
I think that, that the threats are, we look at technological solutions for everything. So we say we'll have biometric tests, we'll have body scanners. Yeah. But I must have visited 20 countries this year, and I still think the human interaction with passengers and profiling is critical. Because it's the low-end technology which is also a threat. It's looking at someone and kind of making that judgment as well. So technology can play an enormous role, but also human interaction, it can be never given up. And as an underwriter, when we assess risk and look at airport risks and how they're managed, we do like more checks. If we're an insurer, we're like, check everyone, check them 20 times. That's a great risk for us. But I know the traveling public don't like that, but it's something that we really would, we really think so.
Well, that was my question to you, to say, while the service providers and the insurance industry would like more checks as security service providers, but the air operators and the airport operators are clamoring for non-intrusive checks, which provide a customer experience which is much more seamless. So can they be merged at some point in time to say yes, a less intrusive check which maintains a standard of security that is necessary? Is it something that you
I'll let the two gentlemen answer that in more detail because they're the experts, but I'm an underwriter, so I only see the worst case scenario. And traveling through Indian airports, the security at the airports is one of the best in the world.
So one part is the implementation of security controls. Another part of dealing with this growth is looking at infusion of skill that is required to maintain these standards. And I don't mean just at CISF or otherwise. I'm looking at it from an overall aviation value chain, especially in the security scenario. How do you see that skilling landscape panning out in India, sir?
See, again, I say that the regulators about aviation security is BCAS, and they have set very, very tough standards in terms of training. And I will just give one example that in terms of pre-embarkation security check, we have come to a point where hijacking is almost impossible. I mean, if you can see the track record in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there has not been any instance of hijacking. And now we have different kind of threats. This has happened because very high standard of training. I just give one example, the screener who sits on the exhibition machine. Every 2 years they have to pass the test. And the test mark, the benchmark is 80% pass with negative marking. There used to be failure earlier, but we have come to a stage where we get almost over 90% results. And these are very tough standards. In terms of, now the threats are different. We have a threat more of from hijacking to we have come to a threat from the city side, as we have seen in Brussels and other places. So now we are doing a very special training by our QRT team, by our marshals in the terminal building, to how do we isolate the terrorists and neutralize them. And a very big program is going on at all the airport. We are picking up people, training them on TOT, trainers of the trainers program, and a large number of people at all the airport we are guarding. We are focusing on how you isolate and neutralize the terrorists, because this is a real-time threat. We do check people. We have a system of random checking at Indian airport. If you come to the airport, we have a system of random checking, and almost 30% of passengers are subjected to those kind of random checking based on profiling. So you are checked, your baggage is checked. So all these efforts are there to see that these new threats are also met. As someone said, as sir said that about we have threat from drones. A new drone policy is coming into effect from 1st of December.
Yes.
We are part of that policy. We are working with those best companies of the world, how we are going to neutralize that threat. And I have personally seen those demonstrations that have been done at Delhi, where we are going to put the radars at the airport to see that once any drone comes 5 kilometers away from the airport, we are able to locate from where it is coming and how it is going to be neutralized, either soft kill, hard kill. So all these threats are there, and we are working, and I can assure you that we are keeping pace with them. And as you know that the terrorist has to succeed only one time.
You have to succeed 100%.
We have to succeed 100 times.
Yes.
And it's a zero-error job. And I have survived at the airport for more than 6 years. And that's a testimony of the fact that we will survive in future also.
So on that really assuring note, I think we can end the discussion, because I also see that we've run out of time, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for this wonderful discussion. And I'm certainly hopeful that we'll see CISF in all our airports, and we'll definitely fly much more, and our country is going to see furtherance of or spread of aviation as we all hopefully.
Yeah, with one change, that from broad smile to limited smile we have come, that's the...
I believe that Rakesh Kumar is with us. I can have you back on stage to please give our gentlemen a token of our appreciation for sharing their time and their insights. You know, there's been a team behind this inaugural Aviation Insurance Symposium, and they've worked long and hard. And in an effort to acknowledge them for a photo op and for your applause, if I could please have on stage the entire global aviation and reinsurance team. On stage, please. You definitely deserve a round of applause.
In order for aviation to grow and for the infrastructure to be able to be supported with all the increase in traffic, you need to have proper insurance arrangements in place to help assist with this growth.
Aviation in India can't work without insurance, so it is very, very important in today's world. The insurance market is trying to adapt to work with the Indian aviation market. We have a long history of working with the Indian aviation market. So I think, yes, it's a very important, and the relationship between the two is very good.
Basically, this kind of forum ensures that what are the trends which are coming up happening in the insurance industry, and how do you protect yourself for future in case of anything which you might not have thought about it. You get exposed to in this forum, and you are able to take care of those risk mitigations in future.
I think the conference and the symposium emphasises how far insurance and aviation have travelled hand in hand over the last 15 or 20 years, and it's great to be here to see the discussion that we're having and the discussion we're having about the future.
Partnered by Times Influence.